How are you doing this morning? Are we ready to serve and to collaborate? You thought I was going to say to learn about service and to learn about collaboration. But as you know, the Leadership Academy, we believe that we learn best when we do. So not only will we reflect on what we are, what we intend for us here at Oakwood University to learn, but we will also be engaged in active learning, meaning we will be doing. So for those of you who may not be auditory, for those of you who may not be visual, for those of you who are more kinesthetic, and in all of my surveys that I've done within church settings, most of our people are kinesthetic. Most of our people are kinesthetic. Maybe that's why when we hear about what we ought to do to live the Christian life, it's easy for us to do the checklist because we have something to check off. And maybe that's because we're a little bit more kinesthetic than we are auditory or visual. Did you have a good alumni weekend?
Yes.
Share, I'd like for maybe one or two individuals to share their experience from Alumni Weekend, just one or two. Let's just reflect on this past Alumni Weekend. What was your experience? Cheryl?
My experience was at the UNCF banquet. I was just blown away by Naturally 7.
Naturally 7, just totally blew Cheryl away. Did you make your way up front?
No.
Okay, when they came back out for the encore?
I missed that.
You missed that portion. Okay, so Naturally 7 was Cheryl, and Cheryl, of course, who is also a musician, a vocalist, would definitely appreciate what Naturally 7 demonstrated for us. You know, it's an absolutely beautiful thing when you see a group who perfect their art form. So they've created a whole new art form, it appears to me, and they have worked to master it. A beautiful thing to see. Someone else, thank you, Cheryl. Anyone else? Alumni Weekend. Alumni Weekend. What was your experience? Paulette?
Hearing Sharon Riley. I knew Sharon before her accident, and I heard her sing the very first time after her accident, and hearing her on Friday night again was like going back. It was amazing what she did, Sharon Riley.
Beautiful, beautiful. Did you enjoy, let's see, we started on Thursday, right? On Thursday, and then Friday was incredibly hectic for those of us who had to run to different events, and all the events, the grand opening of Carter Hall. If you have not had the opportunity to tour Carter Hall, you must tour the new Carter Hall and see those ensuite bathrooms that are to the front of the building and on the right side. Let's see, what else did we do? What else did we experience? Friday night, Vespers, as Paulette indicated. Beautiful experience, just a really beautiful, and Pastor Ivan Williams, this message, yes. In fact, I had, for those of you who are my Facebook friends, you saw I was still reflecting Sabbath morning and shared my reflections on that. And Sabbath and the awards banquet, if you bought tickets for the awards banquet, Saturday night, I heard most folks didn't go to bed till around 2 o'clock in the morning. And then at 7 o'clock Sunday morning, we were at it again. We had the 5K, and then we had the awards breakfast, brunch for the major donors to the university. And then on, and then the marketplace. What an alumni weekend we had. And God held back the storm and the rain until after the weekend was over. We're truly blessed. We're truly blessed. I'm worn out, but I'm still standing.
To physical plant.
Yes.
To the people, they put up the flags.
Yes.
They took down the flags.
Yes.
They
Collins,
put the flags back
where's
up.
Carlos?
I mean,
Carlos and the team.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
you
that
made
was
us
a lot
look
of
good.
work.
You,
The media people.
yes, where is,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
media. Okay, yes, yes. Anthony and team and accounting. Where's Gail? Okay, Gail and her team, including all her volunteers who joined the accounting team. Chief, you kept us secure and informed Friday night when we knew that there was the first tornado, the second tornado. I tell you, it was just awesome. Anyone out there that I'm missing? Any other team that just was all of us? Yes. Let me give the mic to the president. Can you please?
No, I think, for me, you know, when the tornadoes were coming and we had to decide whether to empty the church out and all that thing, I said, well, I didn't want to be morbid. I said, but if I die, let me die in the house of the Lord. I gotta get some points for that or something. In that reckoning day, you gotta get some points. I died in the house of the Lord. Yes, you don't know what to do on those things, but thank you, Chief. Where's Chief? Thank you for all those emergency notices and the directions that come with them, because those things can be very scary. And Pastor Bird and I were collaborating. I said, Pastor, you make the wrong announcement, we get a stampede. We get a stampede, so we need to handle this kind of carefully.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then all of you academic departments, you had your functions to honor alums and to pull them back in. So I know you've had a busy weekend. And we have a leadership academy right after. Can you imagine? Okay, so we're talking about service and we're talking about collaboration and how appropriate that we have these topics right after alumni weekend. Because who ought we to be serving and collaborating with more than our alum? And so we have a huge network and a force that's out there that's capable of working for us every single day. So I'd like for you to reflect on that as we go through the academy and how we can connect with our alumni network even more so that we can harness their service, but also so that we can serve them. Some of our departments are providing continuing education units for our alums, and that's a powerful benefit for them. It means that they get a tax write-off for coming here over the weekend, but they also get the professional credit that they need for their careers. So think about how we can serve and how we can harness their service and how we can collaborate for the good of our university. As we talk about service and as we talk about collaboration, it is extremely important that we know ourselves. It is extremely important. In fact, it is so important. Let me read a couple of statements to you about what leaders are expected, and think about yourself and which category you may fall into. I'm going to read 5 statements and think about yourself. My people expect me to make assignments. They expect me to plan their work. They expect me to evaluate them. Overseeing their work is my job. Is that how you think of yourself as a leader? Here's another one. I get my people to plan their work and their goals so as to achieve our organization's mission and our personal growth needs at the same time. I get my people to plan their work and their goals so as to achieve our organization's mission and our personal growth needs at the same time. Does that describe you as a leader? Here's a third one. As a supervisor, I know my people and their limitations fairly well and can give assignments that are appropriate to their capabilities. Does that describe you as a leader? Number 4, I let my employees handle the work. They know where to find me when they need me. Is that you as a leader? And the final one, I prefer to take a consultative role, supplying ideas and then getting my people to massage them until they become their own. We're one of those 5 as we choose our leadership style. As we move towards these last 2 values, we're really moving in a very specific way into the way we lead. And so when we talk about service and we talk about collaboration, we're talking about how we lead. How we lead people, how we lead processes. Okay? So are you the hands-off person or are you hands-on? Do you know capabilities and lead accordingly? Or do you not even think about the capabilities of your people when you make an assignment? Do you just say, well, it's their job? They're supposed to do it? That reflects a particular style. Let's see how knowing ourselves will lead us towards understanding the values of service and the value of collaboration. There's something biblical about knowing thyself. What is that Bible text? To thine own self. Okay? So we need, you know, in my relationship with God, I need to know myself, right? You know, I need to know myself. Am I a beggar more than I am a glorifier? We can kind of do some contrast in terms of who we are and therefore how we see our relationship with God. How we pray what we pray about. How we glorify what we glorify Him about. Okay, what are some of the attitudes that might interfere with a Christian leader's ability to demonstrate Christian leadership? What are some of the attitudes? Just two or three people. What are some of the attitudes that you think interfere with the Christian leader's ability to demonstrate Christian leadership? And I'm being redundant here. And I'm not saying just the leader, the Christian leaders. Right. I'm not just saying leadership, I'm saying Christian leadership, meaning it's biblically directed. Right. Pride. What is pride? I'm not asking for what is the opposite of pride. That's easy for us. What is pride? How do you know it when you see it? How do you know it when you see it? You know, sometimes I can't describe something, but when I see it, I know it.
Exactly.
I. What are some of the ways we do I without using the word I? How do we do I? Arrogance. What does arrogance look like, Sonia?
All about me.
All about me. All about me. If you're having a committee meeting, Sonia, what does arrogance look like in that committee meeting?
Micromanaging.
Micromanaging. Why would I micromanage if I am arrogant? Or I'm demonstrating or displaying arrogance. I may not be arrogant, but in that moment I may be displaying arrogance. How will you know it when you see it?
A controlling person. Controlling person.
Okay, Ryan?
I'm wondering if sometimes you kind of need to take control.
Mm-hmm.
I think what comes with that is...
Hold on now, Ryan, just know, I know Ryan's background, and so Ryan is helping us understand this at a deeper level. No, you are, Ryan, you are, and so I'd like for you to just acknowledge it. You are. Okay, Ryan, please share with us.
All I wanted to say was, sometimes you do have to control some elements of a group, because if not, it can.
Yes, sir.
I think the problem is when you belittle others.
I wish you had the microphone.
Belittle their ideas that they're trying to contribute.
So belittling, putting other people's ideas down, or not listening, not seeking to understand what they are trying to share or what they're sharing. And maybe a little bit more dominance. Dominance. Belittling, putting individuals down. I want to go back to what Ryan said at the very beginning, where he said sometimes control is necessary. If the group may be getting out of control and you need to get it into control. But you may also have a purpose for that meeting, and the purpose is specific and it's stated, and the group may not be moving in that direction. And so you need to redirect, which is a controlling behavior, okay? Here's the thing, and that Ryan was taking us in the direction of decision making. We use certain behaviors in order to get to a decision. And how we work with a group or a team determines how the team or our leadership may be viewed. There's sometimes when it may be more a controlling behavior because you're working in a short period of time. Folks, we have to make a decision in 5 minutes. We need to stay on focus now. Okay, that's a controlling behavior, isn't it? Okay, but it has a purpose. Now that leader may be viewed as controlling if the leader does not state why they're using those particular behaviors. So that leader may need to say, folks, we have time constraints here. So we need to work within those. I will be the time monitor. I may be the summarizer to encourage us to move expeditiously towards a decision. Do you expect Chief to engage in a lot of discussion when there's a tornado warning? What kind of behavior will we see from our police chief?
He's gonna take charge.
He will take charge.
Directive.
Okay, and the policies of the university has given him authority. So the person he's going to consult with, one person, not all of us, not any one of us other than the president. You know, he's not going to call and say, Flora, what do you think I should do with your building over there? Okay, he's going to tell, and we have to act based on his direction. So depending on the problem, depending on the issues, we will see different behaviors. Next Leadership Academy next year, we're going to talk about some of these behaviors that we can choose from, depending on the purpose of our team or our meeting. So we have pride, one other behavior that interferes with the Christian leader's ability to demonstrate Christian leadership, one other. So we have pride, which gets in the way of humility. One other.
Well, one of the others was also mentioned as well, and that's arrogance.
Arrogance, closely related to pride, isn't it? Okay, closely related to pride. So there is an attitude that the Christian leader needs to display within our leadership behaviors. Well,
I was just going to say an unconverted leader.
An unconverted leader. Ooh. What needs to be converted? Is it a once and for all?
No. Daily.
Daily. A converted heart. Because what Will is getting at is that our attitudes, true to Matthew 5 and Luke 6, comes from the heart. Where the heart is where we live as leaders. Okay, I see 2 hands. Regina, you had your hand for a while. Please.
An overly passive leader.
An overly passive leader. Boom! And overly passive, because you're putting passive with leader?
Well, it is, but they're there.
Let's ask Regina for a little bit more. What is an overly passive leader? What does that look like? What do you see?
I see a person who has the seat as the chair, but brings nothing to the table as the chair.
So truly is an oxymoron. Because the person has the title leader, but is not demonstrating leadership. Okay? So the person has a title, leader because of the job or the specific assignment, but they're not displaying the agentic or the assertive behaviors that we expect from such a position holder. Okay? Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And last one, Anthony?
Insensitive.
Remember, we're talking about service and we're talking about collaboration. And we're talking about, in service, we're talking about meeting other people's needs. Insensitive. In public health, maybe at the end I'll come back and do some connections here. In public health, we usually talk about these kinds of people as the ones who go into a community with the intent to deliver public health, and they have their definition of what the community needs, and therefore they go in and to do exactly that because they know what is good, what is best for the community. There's a little bit of arrogance mixed in with insensitivity in this case, and so they go in and they do what they believe they should actually do, and they never inquire as to the perceived need of the individuals they're seeking to serve. Now you talk about oxymoron. They never inquire into, so I'll say, okay, Anthony, I think you need so-and-so.
Right.
You know, I'd like to help you do this because I think you need it. Never having the conversation with Anthony to discover what his need is, and then communicating what I think I hear back to him for his affirmation that what I see is actually a correct assessment of his need.
The next level to that, what we find is they don't say, I think you need, they say, this is what I will provide you.
Yes, this is what I will
The
provide
conversation,
you.
I think you need, allows a conversation for me to say, no, that's not what I need. But when you say, this is what I'm gonna provide you, then you assume that's what I need, and then there's no other conversation.
In public health, we call that imperialism. There's another word that we know about that. There's another word that's familiar to us. It's the colonial mindset. The colonial mindset. We're coming to help the less fortunate, whatever that is. And don't tell us what you need because you don't have the capacity to even know what you need. We know better. Father knows best. Okay. So we need to know ourselves. We need to know ourselves. And I have a couple of texts up here to help us with that concept. Basically, ungodly behavior gets in the way. Disobedience to the explicit will of God. When God tells me to be humble, I can't argue with that. I can't say my personality is this way.
Amen.
And therefore, no. Obedience. So ungodly behavior gets in the way. And as we said, behavior comes from the heart, right? From our attitude, where we are living every single morning and when we wake up. Disobedience to the explicit will of God, and then attempts to be deceptive. We're deceitful. And sometimes we're deceitful by simply omitting truth. By omitting facts, we give impression of something else. You know? It's like 2-year-olds are good at that. Yeah.
50-year-old.
Yes, and all the way up. It's a learned behavior. So basically, people get in the way. Our attitudes get in the way of the leadership God expects us to demonstrate. Very quickly, you have an instrument. We're coming quickly to your instrument, so you should have it scored by now. When we're talking about service and collaboration, as I said, people get in the way. We get in the way of our own leadership. And this is a leadership academy, isn't it? So even while we're talking about values and we're wrapping up with these last two values of service and collaboration, we tend to get in our own way. Before anyone else gets in my way, I'm more likely to get in my own way. my ability to demonstrate leadership is dependent on my heart, and it's dependent on the behaviors that I demonstrate to others. So it's not, what is that little song we learned in Cradle Roll? It's me, oh Lord.
Standing in need of prayer.
Okay? When it comes to leadership, it's me. Okay? It's not someone else. You know, I always think when I have to give an answer to a supervisor, I make sure that my answer for something I missed or whatever is never something where I'm trying to make an excuse for myself. I'm responsible, and I need to take responsibility for my leadership. So, in our leadership, there's something that happens. As long as you get more than one person in a room or in a group where we're working together, we will have differences of opinion. Do you think subordinates have differences of opinion with their supervisor? Uh-huh. Do you ever have a difference of opinion with your supervisor? I do.
That's Dr. McDonald.
Yes. and conveniently, he's off on a task. I conveniently asked Dr. McDonald to take care of a responsibility that I was supposed to be at, so he wouldn't hear me say this. But I have differences of opinion with my supervisor. Do you think the people who report to me have differences of opinion? Yes. Okay. We don't reach excellence without having differences of opinion. I say we can go here. They say, Dr. P, that's too low. I think we can go here. That's a difference of opinion. Am I willing to hear it? Am I willing to hear it, however? Okay? So there will always be differences. Okay? When there are differences, what do? Our attitudes get challenged, doesn't it? Sometimes we go, I'm the boss. We do like we do with our children. Dr. Reeves.
I think if we have a sense of security,
Uh-huh.
you know, it would help us to respond in a positive way.
If we have a sense of security, meaning I carry a badge like chief?
We're insecure.
Okay? Dr. Weems, help us understand what that is. Because remember, we're talking about waking up in the morning. We have our leadership role to stand in. How can I walk during the day with a sense of security so that no bad behaviors do not interfere with my leadership?
Having faith in your calling.
Faith in my calling.
Yes, in your appointment. Yes.
Amen. In my appointment. So am I in this role, in this responsibility because I'm in service to God? Even before my supervisor. So before I interact with Dr. McDonald, my calling is to God. Amen. And so I can't sit back and say, well, this one didn't do that, that one didn't do that, therefore, because my calling is to God. And that gives me a certain orientation and really a certainty to my walk. And also it gives me a reference point for everything that I do. Would God want me to do it in this way? Does God want me to collaborate? Does God want me to serve? May not be my personality, but the security in my calling. Now, we have heard at the beginning of the academy about sometimes we're in the wrong seat, and sometimes we're on the wrong bus. But that's a personal decision. And sometimes people say, I'm on the wrong bus, and then they go try another bus, and then they realize they were on the right bus to begin with. Okay, so we have room for that, don't we? Okay, so certainty of my calling gives me security. Okay.
Dr. Pollard?
Yes.
When I read the sentence, no go-to conflict management style, I was thinking, before any words were said, I was thinking, you know, you teach the way you like to be taught. You lead the way you like to be led. But sometimes you meet people who need to be led a different way. And that's when the fight starts.
That becomes a difference of opinion, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Because I go to my preferred style, and the person I'm trying to lead or persons I'm trying to lead have a different orientational preference, and now we have conflict.
Right. And sometimes it needs to be a bus transfer.
A bus transfer. I hear you, man. Really? If the seat is not comfortable on the bus, maybe I need to try different seats. If I can't find a comfortable seat, maybe the comfortable seat is on another bus. Yeah, we hear you. So we're talking about differences. How do we deal with differences? And here's how we deal with differences. We deal with differences based on our preference. That's our go-to. That's our go-to. We deal with differences when emotions are running high, when you feel challenged as a supervisor, when you disagree with the suggestion around the table, we go to our preferred style. It is a true thing. We're wired a certain way. Behaviors are learned. You know, we could look at all the twin studies out there. Twins who are separated, okay, from birth, okay? And unless they're identical twins, you see nurture over nature. Our environment shapes us. If I've been abused as a child, I'm more likely to be abusive towards Cheryl. And I need to know that. If I grew up in a household where I was told to shut up and not share my opinion, I am likely to regard my people in the same way, trying to get to the controlling. Okay? So we do bring something to the table that determines our leadership. It also influences how we relate to service and how we relate to collaboration. The beautiful thing is, we can retrain ourselves if we know ourselves. We can retrain ourselves under God. Okay? Know thyself. This academy is about knowing how we relate to people. You've completed your REACT instrument. Bottom line, it's a very simple instrument. It lets us know how we relate to others. We're likely to either be highly competitive, to use an avoidance style, to collaborate, to accommodate, or to compromise. By knowing our preference, we're able to make intelligent choices. In this situation, do I need to compete or do I need to collaborate? Okay? It's important that we know the difference and know the situations in which each particular style is needed. Because we will always have differences. Always. And you think about if you have children, especially teenagers or small children, this is critical because they know the buttons to push. But guess what, in the workplace, after you've been the supervisor for about 3 days, your people know which buttons to push. And sometimes they're really doing it, it's not like they've studied this stuff. They are just attuned to what brings out either your bad behavior or your good behavior. Okay? dads who have girls, your little girl from about 2 or 3 years old know how to get whatever she wants from you.
To pull
Doesn't she,
the
Daddy?
heartstrings.
You can watch the interactions. You can watch it. And if you have sons, your sons have a different way of getting what they want from you. Very different from girls. But by age 2, they learn your buttons. Do you find yourself going off the handle at work? Someone pushed your button. And you may not have known that you have that button. Do you find yourself saying yes too many times and then regretting that you said yes 30 minutes later or a minute later? Someone pushed your button. How do we balance it off? How do we balance? So we're intentional. Intentional.
Dr. Prudence.
Yes.
You're going to help us identify.
Yes, we will. After we're saying, hurry up and get to it, I want to know. Yes, sir. Here we go. So we have. Now, by the way, let me just set up. Yes, let me just set up. All 5 of these styles are useful to you. Please do not share with your table mate your preferred style. Okay? Unless you're sure that's your best buddy and, okay? Please do not share your preferred style because it could become a button. What I'd like for you to commit to is to using the style that the situation requires. Know your style and know when to set it aside. Your preferred style is probably your strength. But we have to develop strength on the right and on the left. So across all 5 of these. So let's see what they look like very quickly, and you'll get the meaning for yourself. You won't really need me to interpret, and then I'll tell you what to put into the blanks. Okay? So on the bottom, sorry, I should have used a different color here. Please do not blame that on Sheila. That's my. Okay? What we have here are 2 dimensions: how we relate to others and how we relate to self. Am I other-centered? And am I self-agentic? Do I assert for self? Okay? On the back, we see, for example, on the stock market floor, the folks who tend to be on the stock market, the traders, tend to be highly aggressive, competitive folks. It does not necessarily make them more effective than the less aggressive, competitive traders. Okay? But they tend to be aggressive because the environment demands a certain behavior. Their sports figures tend to learn this early on in pee-wee, football, or whatever. Very early on, they learn to kill by any means necessary. Okay? As long as the ref doesn't catch you. Okay? Highly aggressive, highly competitive behavior. Highly aggressive behavior is right here. That's one we know. It's all about self, not about other people. Highly aggressive behavior. Okay? We kind of see Jesus doing some of this with the woman at the well, with those who were accusing her. He didn't ask them to sit down and let's discuss. Okay, they'd had ample opportunities. Okay? Okay, so he asserted his Father's kingdom in bringing judgment on the people. Okay, and you could say he had a double because it was the accusers and the woman. So it's almost like it created another dimension to my chart here. Okay? Highly competitive, meaning it's all about self, not about others. Okay? The accommodating person gives in to others. Okay? More concerned about others than about self. The accommodating person. Meaning, if I'm the dean and the student wants something, and I find out that the student is the daughter of, let's make it not relationship oriented, let's make it money related. We find out that that student, the parent is a multimillionaire. I might be more likely, if I am accommodating oriented in my behaviors, to give that student what the student wants. Okay? Accommodate others. Self, and here you should think of self as the person who argues for the policies of the university. So I will find a way to bend the policies to give that student what that student wants. Okay? Avoidant person is a person who is low on self and low on others. Sometimes you see them as que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. What was it? The person who is so passive with their leadership? Overly passive, I think was the phrase. That person over here. You want them to make a decision, they won't make a decision. Okay? If you tend to be over here, remember I said all of these are good in their right time? Are there times when we need to be we need to avoid making a decision? Are there times? Yes. Definitely. You know, in my anger, I will not spank my child. I will delay the engagement with my child until I can get myself under control. So in the heat of the moment, I need to delay. So there are times when this behavior is needed. Here's the problem. The folks who are up here, who are highly competitive, have extreme difficulty moving to this behavior. And you see it on disciplinary committees, Ryan. You see those tensions as you're trying to get people, we need to make a decision right now. Okay? And you're saying, maybe we need to cool down until the next disciplinary meeting when we can engage the facts. Here's a dangerous one. Middle grounder. Because compromise is not accommodation. Compromise is when I give up something to get something. Okay? Give up something to get something. When do you never give up something? When do you never give up? Let's see, we're supervisors. So let's stay in the supervisory mode. When do you never give up something as a supervisor? The principles of the university that are undergirding the policies of the university. No compromise. But that's already protected, isn't it? Because we don't have the authority to do that. But sometimes people do, and they put the university at risk. Okay? And that's why insurance is there, but then that person often gets fired or whatever because they took to themselves a behavior that has not been delegated. But compromise, highly held values. In the workplace, you think about your students, they're going out there, the boss asks them to work just 10 minutes into the Sabbath on Friday evening. It's a common tactic used by workplaces. They get you to work just 10 minutes on that critical assignment. The person comes back and say, I can't work on Sabbath, but you did. You've compromised a deeply held value. So obviously it's not that deeply held. So now the church will say we can't defend you because the evidence is clear that you did work on Sabbath. Okay? So when but when do we need to compromise? When do we need to compromise? When do we need to compromise? Sure.
When it's my opinion against yours, but you see that there's light
Mhm.
with the other person.
Exactly.
And you're willing to compromise.
Exactly. No principle involved. It's simply my opinion versus your opinion. So how can we now find, I think President Obama uses this, how can we find common ground? Okay? How can we find common ground? Michelle.
I can recall when Soul Force came onto our campus.
Soul Force came onto our campus.
And they staged their area and wanted us as a university to respond to the challenges that some of our students may be facing with gay, lesbian, transsexual, so on and so forth. I can't remember the exact term. Was it LGBT?
LGBTQ.
And, exactly. And our motto that we had to coin was no condemnation, no compromise. And we coined that as an administrative team. And you know, we're working with that and trying to set things in place before their arrival. But as you said, we were not going to compromise.
So you oriented, what is the principle that that must guide our behaviors, and very much steps to Christ. Love the sinner, hate the sin. Okay, can you repeat that phrase for us, Michelle?
No condemnation, no compromise.
No condemnation, no compromise. And by holding to that kind of a mantra, you were able to maintain a steady course in interacting with Soul Force.
Exactly, and they were so appreciative of our attitude and our receptiveness towards them coming onto our campus and giving them a venue to speak with us, for us to share in dialogue.
Thank you, but it's not over, it's never over. Okay, Chaplain Weems?
It was a slight positive compromise, because instead of coming on campus, we compromised and said, let's go to 4920. Well, they're trying to flush it.
So common ground was, we didn't compromise on the campus, but can we have a conversation off campus?
Right.
Okay, common ground, the idea of having conversation, but also knowing where your boundaries are in terms of the conversation. We're not going to move, but we're willing to hear you. Okay. Okay, you've been looking at my summary statement for each. So the avoidance-oriented person is, I prefer to avoid conflict. Okay? These people tend to react to the word conflict when I'm talking about dealing with differences. They say, but conflict is such a, and they actually react to the word. But these are individuals who tend to prefer to avoid. They have a wonderful skill, because when you reach an impasse in your meetings, all you have to do is schedule the next time that you're going to meet, and they're fine. Okay? Or they will tend to schedule, can we meet next week this time, when they see things heating up. Okay? So this can be a wonderful skill. The avoidance-oriented person, though, has to know when to stop, because if the goal is to solve the problem, you have to meet and you have to address the issues. But you schedule when you will return to the conversation. Right now we're in performance evals, aren't we? Do you think there might be times when you need to say, can we meet tomorrow? So we'll put a pause here. We'll thank the Lord for the opportunity to have the conversation, and we'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. If emotions are running so high that you're losing perspective. Dean?
I call it save it to draft. That letter you're writing and all that fire's coming out, I save it to draft.
Yeah.
And I come back to it.
Yes.
And often it's not sent.
And make sure to never set your mailbox to send the drafts. You know, that's the old trick where you put it in your desk drawer and you come back the next day and you read it, you say, I wrote that.
Yeah.
What was I thinking?
What was I feeling?
Yeah, what was I feeling? Attitude. Yeah, okay. Compete, I tend to pursue my own wishes even at the expense of others. Okay? Compromise, I tend to give and take during disagreements because everybody can't have their own way and people have to find a middle ground they all can live with. Collaborate, I am willing to accept the needs of others while asserting my own needs. I ended on that last one because that's the value we're talking about today, isn't it? I am willing to accept the needs of others while asserting my own needs. So what does it mean to assert? It's not being aggressive. Here's what I think. Here's my opinion. Not shying away from stating my opinion, and at the same time, I'm going to say, now, how do you see that? Okay? Let's talk about it. Maybe we can come up with something that will work for the best good of the situation that we're trying to address. Collaboration. Collaboration. That's the value, and we're saying that this is a highly held value here at Oakwood University, so we need to understand. So even if it's not my preferred style, my preferred reaction style, it is so highly valued at this university because it's where Jesus was. Amos 3:3. Do you remember? Remember when we talk about differences, we're talking about more than one person. So let me ask the question, can two walk together except they be agreed? Can two really move in the same direction if they're not in agreement as to the direction? Leadership is about having shared values. Can I lead you if you don't embrace the role that has been assigned to you? You think about the people you supervise. You know, for those of you who are department chairs, if you don't have shared values with your faculty, if you're the dean of a school, if you don't have shared values, what are the things that we hold common in this department? How do we view this department? Residence hall. Can two walk together unless they be agreed? Shared values. What do we hold as deeply held values? In our division, I think a month or two ago, we were talking about being professionals. What does it mean to be a professional? Is that a value that's held by all of us and each of us? To profess to be something? If I am Linda, what is one of the titles in your department?
We have
Counselor?
Yes.
Okay, so a financial aid counselor? Oh, if I don't see myself as a professional financial aid counselor, then I won't take responsibility for those duties. I won't try to be better tomorrow than I was today. Today, you may see some bad behaviors from me because I don't profess to be a financial aid counselor. So you can talk to me all you want to, Yolanda, about excellence, but you will not see excellence from me. Okay, so you've completed it. So what's your style? Okay, here you go. Write them in quickly for me, please. The first one is avoiding on your score sheet, the first blank. The first column, column 1, if you put the word avoiding, column 2, accommodating, column 3, dominating or competing, the meaning is the same. Column 4, compromising, And what's column 5? Collaboration. Collaboration, column 5. Okay, so for collaboration, I'm not going to go through all of them because I summarized it already. We're moving to our activity now where we're going to develop and see these principles in action, these values of service and collaboration. I am willing to accept the needs of others while asserting my own needs. There's usually some reasonable chance that a solution can be found to satisfy both parties in a conflict. Common ground. Even if others believe a solution is not possible, it is worth trying to find a solution to the difficulty. People who are committed to collaboration will collaborate. They will want to work together because it's a matter, so the question is, let's talk about how we can get there. Amos 3:3. Can two walk together except they be agreed? So what are we in agreement on in terms of the direction, the path we should go to resolve that problem? There are extra copies of the instrument. I encourage you to take it back to your departments, make copies of it, and use it in your department meetings. So we have provided extra copies for you. I do want to encourage you, also if you have a spouse or a significant other who may not be your spouse yet, this is great for premarital stuff. Can you imagine two highly competitive people in the same household? Or people with very different styles where one does not respect the other person's preferred way of dealing with differences? So lots of good opportunity for conversation. Okay? Collaboration and service definitely says Lone Ranger leadership is not allowed. Not allowed. Not allowed. Lone Ranger leadership. I'm going to do a question here that I had not planned to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm going to ask a question that I had not planned to ask, talking about Lone Ranger leadership, which is the opposite of the collaborative leader and the service-oriented leader. And here's the question, Mr. President. Mr. President. Mr. President, as the CEO of the university, is it allowable for you to engage in Lone Ranger leadership?
No, not at all.
And may I ask why?
Because it's not carrying the whole organization forward.
Okay, if the president cannot demonstrate Lone Ranger leadership, I think none of us can demonstrate Lone Ranger leadership. We have to bring our team along with us. And for some of us, our team may be student workers. We have to bring our team along with us. Okay, next year we're going to get quite deeply into some of these concepts. Ineffective leadership, let me just show you quickly here. The fire hose, right here, right? They're trying to push this up. We have two different groups of individuals who have different goals. And when they get together on the mountain, okay, we see collision in their goals. Okay? That's not collaboration. Okay? Sometimes in our meetings, you can see the tensions. One group or an individual has an agenda. Okay? The agenda may be to let water out of the hose. But this is not the time to let the water out of the hose because it interferes with the group that is trying to go uphill. Okay? If the house was on fire and the hose was appropriate, okay, then maybe this group ought to stop pushing uphill, park their cart, and turn around and help this group. Can two walk together except they be agreed? effective communication happens when we put the pieces together and we can see the picture that we're designed to create.